Hey y'all, welcome to a new What's for Dinner. I'm going to be sharing 5 really simple dinners in today's video. And first up, I'm making some goulash in the Instant Pot. My family loves this recipe. I have made it a few times now, and my favorite thing about it is how quick it comes together. So I started off by putting my Instant Pot on the saute mode. I threw in a pound of ground beef. I seasoned it up with some onion powder, salt, and black pepper. I also tossed in a big spoonful of minced garlic. I'm just using the jar stuff here. At this point, I'm going to give it a good stir, let that continue cooking. If you wanted to add some actual diced onions in here, you could at this point. I skipped that, but I did cook that meat with half of a diced green bell pepper. That was actually my first time doing that with this recipe, and I absolutely love that addition. So once my meat was fully cooked and I drained some of that grease, I added in just a regular size can of diced tomatoes as well as a can of tomato sauce. You need beef broth for this recipe, about 1.5 cups worth. I forgot that, so I'm just substituting it with 1.5 cups of water and some beef bouillon powder. I also did a good splash of Worcestershire sauce, a teaspoon of Lorry seasoned salt, and about a half a tablespoon of Italian seasoning. Now, typically when I make goulash, I use macaroni noodles. I didn't have quite enough, so I'm just using what I got. I did a half a bag of these cavatappi noodles. I'm not really sure how to pronounce that, but you want to make sure that the pasta is down in that liquid. Add your lid, make sure it's set to sealing, and then we're going to let it pressure cook for 4 minutes. When the timer is up, I did a quick release, and there's the finished product. It cooks up perfect every single time. We like to top our bowls with some shredded cheese, and I made some garlic cheddar biscuits on the side. I always tend to serve goulash with some type of garlic bread on the side, but this recipe, it is a family favorite. My kids absolutely love it. It is cheap to make. Like I said, it is really fast to make, and it's just full of flavor. It's an awesome recipe. It's one of my favorite things to make in the Instant Pot. I highly recommend it. Up next, I'm going to be making one of my favorite meals from my childhood, starting off with some soup beans. I took a pound of dried pinto beans. I washed them really good, sorted through them, and I soaked them in this big bowl of water overnight. So that's what they look like after soaking for several hours. I drained that old water off, gave them another good rinse, and then to my Dutch oven, I've thrown in a ham bone. That's the ham bone from the ham in my last video. That's my first time actually cooking soup beans with a ham bone, but that's going to give it lots of flavor, and it's going to add meat to the dish, of course. I threw in those beans. I added in plenty of water, and for now, I'm just going to season these with lots of onion powder. I brought that up to a boil, covered it with a lid, and I'm going to turn it down to a simmer and let that cook for a few hours. A lot of people like salmon patties with their soup beans, so I'm weird about seafood. I've actually never had salmon, but my husband loves them. So I'm making these mainly for him. I did hope that the kids would give them a try, but they didn't want no part of it, and I can't expect them to when I won't either. So anyways, I did 2 packets of the salmon. I really like the packets because they're boneless and skinless. I broke it up good with a fork before adding anything in. I did a handful of crushed saltine crackers, salt, pepper, onion, and garlic powder, a couple good spoonfuls of Duke's mayo, and an egg. I'm just giving that a good mix. I'm adding in a little bit of self-rising flour and the juice of half of a lemon. I did get the recipe for this from TikTok, so I will link that down below in my description box. But I'm going to go ahead and cover that and set that in the fridge until closer to dinner time. I'm also going to serve the soup beans with some fried potatoes. So I'm just using some russet potatoes that I peeled and washed. I do prefer to use smaller potatoes when it comes to fried potatoes. I cut them different every time I make them, but here lately I've just been liking to kind of cut them down the middle and then give them a slice so they're in little half shapes. I like to cook my fried potatoes in oil and butter. Sometimes I do olive oil, sometimes I do vegetable oil, but I did do vegetable oil here, and I added a few spoonfuls of unsalted butter. I threw all of those potatoes in there, and again, I also season my potatoes for fried potatoes differently every time I make them. But on this day, I was just feeling some salt, pepper, onion, and garlic powder. and I like to go in and give it a really good stir. That way the seasoning is coating all of the sides of the potato, and then I will leave them alone for a bit. I come in every now and then and give it a stir. I'm looking for like half of the potatoes to turn like golden brown, which is what you see here. Once they reach that point, I like to put a lid on, turn the heat down a bit, and I wait for them to get like super soft. This right here is perfect to me. We love fried potatoes. I used to make them all the time, but I haven't been doing that so much recently, but we love these. So here I'm going to get started on the salmon patties. I just added a good layer of oil to this pan. I could have got away with adding a little bit less oil, but I accidentally added a little bit more than what I wanted to. But I'm just taking that mixture that I made earlier and dropping it by the spoonful, kind of flattening it out a little bit. And I'm just going to let these cook for a few minutes on each side. Once you see that it's getting kind of golden brown, that's when I went in and flipped it. Also, I will say that I feel like the pouches of salmon do not smell near as bad as like the canned salmon. I don't know if my nose has matured or what, but these were not too bad to cook up, coming from someone that doesn't like to try stuff like this. But anyways, now that these are nice and golden brown, I'm just going to get these removed to a paper towel lined plate so that all that extra grease can kind of drain off of it. I was able to get 6 of these out of those 2 packets, and again, I didn't try it, but my husband really loved them. He was super appreciative and bragged on them. But back to these beans. So this is a couple hours in. These were mostly tender, but not 100% there just yet. So I took out that ham bone and all of the large pieces of ham. That way I can set that to the side and take 2 forks and shred that ham up, get all the meat off of that bone. Here I am just kind of searching for any big pieces of ham to see if I needed to shred it. And the next couple clips, my camera is glitching out like crazy. I don't know why it's doing that. I don't know how to fix it. It's aggravating, but it's about to clear up. But as you can see, I added in that shredded ham, and I'm going to season it heavily with salt and black pepper. A lot of people will tell you not to salt your beans until the end of the cook time. I don't know how true it is, but that's just always kind of stuck with me, so that's what I do. But here is what those beans and ham look like once they are done. You got to serve your soup beans with some cornbread. So here's my plate. I put the soup beans and cornbread in a bowl. I've got my fried potatoes that I did add ketchup to after this clip, and I love canned spinach with my soup beans cooked in butter, salt, and pepper. And y'all, this boxed honey cornbread mix is absolutely delicious. I was raised on cornbread that is not sweet at all, so that is just what I'm used to. I've always been kind of anti-sweet cornbread until now. I seriously think this boxed cornbread mix is going to convert me. It is just so good if you have never tried it. One meal that my whole family can always agree on is nachos. We love them, especially my kid. It's like one of their favorite meals. So I decided to switch it up and do some chicken tacos. So I'm going to be making the chicken in the crock pot. So I've got 2 boneless, skinless chicken breasts that I just tossed in. I covered those with a half a cup of chicken broth and a packet of taco seasoning. The instructions for this recipe was really odd to me, so I definitely just did my own thing there, but I will still link the recipe in the description box so you can get the ingredients if you can't remember them. But you need a cup of salsa. I love that Great Value Cantina salsa. Definitely one of my favorites. I was going to do half because I was worried about this being like too watery, but I decided to do the full cup. And I'm going to cook that on low for 3 hours. This particular crock pot cooks pretty hot, so I'm weird about like overcooked chicken. I just don't like it. So I definitely like to keep an eye on it when I'm cooking chicken in a crock pot. I checked it with a meat thermometer. It all checked out. And as you can see, as I'm shredding this, it is just falling apart super easily. And it's got a really good texture to it. There's been a few times I've made crock pot chicken and I wasn't crazy about the texture. But this one right here was seriously so good. So mixing that back on in with everything that was left in the crock pot. And then that last ingredient is this salsa con queso. I just added a half a jar of that, and I'm just gonna mix it all up. And yes, it is a little bit runny. That doesn't really bother me. I know that's a game changer for some people. So my recommendation is, if you're going to make this, is to cook it with 3 large chicken breasts. I think that will make it perfect. That's what I will do next time. But now I'm going to assemble my nachos. So I've got my tortilla chips on the bottom. I use a slotted spoon to put that chicken over the top. I shredded up some Colby Jack cheese and added a little bit of that. I heated up my homemade refried beans that I had froze the leftovers of. I've got sour cream, homemade guacamole, and some pickled jalapenos. And this was so delicious. It was really easy to make, and it's a favorite. This chicken was so flavorful and juicy, tender, all the good things. We seriously loved it, and not a drop of that chicken went to waste. On this night, I am making another family favorite, and that is these crazy easy beef tips. So to my large skillet, I've just heated up a few tablespoons of vegetable oil. My skillet's really hot. It's like on a high heat, and you want to add in 2 pounds of some beef stew meat, or you can save some money like I did and find a chuck roast on sale and just cut it up yourself. So I just added that chuck roast into the hot skillet. I got it all out into an even layer, and I'm just wanting to sear it for a few minutes on all sides. So once I saw that the bottom was turning brown, I'm just flipping them over one by one with my tongs. This is a little bit tedious, but nothing too crazy. It does not have to be perfect. So now that everything has been seared, I've added in 2 cups of water. You need some low sodium soy sauce. You could use regular, but I do recommend the low sodium. Do a 1/4 cup of that, as well as a 1/4 cup of Worcestershire sauce. Then I'm going in and seasoning everything with onion and garlic powder and some black pepper. The recipe does call for some salt, but I always leave it out, and it's perfectly salty. So I'm going to give that a good stir and bring that up to a boil. I'm going to add my lid, turn it down to a simmer, and it can take anywhere from an hour and a half to 2 hours. Mine has always been done at the 1.5 hour mark. So the last step is to take a packet of brown gravy mix it with a cup of water in like a separate bowl or a cup, and then pour that on into your skillet. Bring it up to a boil until it has thickened to your liking. It should only take a couple of minutes, and that is it. You can serve this over egg noodles or mashed potatoes, or do like I do. I do it over rice, and I almost always serve it with a side of peas. It just goes so good with it. But this recipe, it just turns out perfect every single time. It always blows my mind with how good it is, and it's pretty much a set it and forget it type of meal. And as you can see, it is just so tender. This last meal, I did not have planned out. I had a really busy day, and I just opened up this cookbook, and I said the first thing I see that I have all the ingredients for is what I'm going to make. So I'm kind of going by this Pioneer Woman's ranch pork chop sheet pan meal, but I am going to be swapping the pork chops out with chicken because that's what I had on hand. So the first thing I'm going to do is make a glaze that's going to go over the chicken. So in this bowl, I added 2 tablespoons of some Hidden Valley ranch seasoning mix. Mine's to the bottom of the bottle, so there was a lot of clumps that I had to kind of work out with my fork before I added everything else. But I'm doing 2 tablespoons of honey. You can spray your measuring spoon with some nonstick cooking spray before adding your honey, and it'll just slide right out. I should have done that, but I was in such a hurry. I did 2 tablespoons of Worcestershire sauce, and then 2 tablespoons of olive oil, about a teaspoon of some kosher salt, and I'm just cracking in some fresh black pepper. And with my fork, I'm just going to get that good and combined until it's a nice smooth glaze. So now I have whipped out my sheet pan, and I've got 2 chicken breasts here that I've just sliced in half to make 4 thinner pieces. I'm getting that all added to one side of the sheet pan. I do recommend lining your sheet pan with some tinfoil or some parchment paper for a little bit easier cleanup. But I'm just simply taking that glaze and I am brushing it over the top and the bottom of the chicken, and I am going to reserve just a little bit to brush on the chicken later on in the cook time. Next, I am going to grab this bag of these little baby gold potatoes. I went and washed them really good, and I just cut them into quarters. This has a pretty quick cook time, so I knew that I needed to make the potatoes a little bit smaller than what I typically would so that they would be tender enough in time. So I just drizzled them in some olive oil. I added about a tablespoon of ranch seasoning and just some salt and pepper. So just going in with my spoon and giving that a good stir to make sure that the oil and the seasonings are going to coat all of the potatoes. So I'm just going to dump those on out onto the middle of that sheet pan. I still have to leave some room for some veggies. I really should have used a bigger sheet pan. And I got these mini sweet peppers on sale for like $1.99 at Kroger. I didn't really know what to do with them. The original recipe calls for like fresh green beans. I didn't have those anyways, but I decided to swap that for these sweet peppers. And these were honestly my favorite part of the meal. These came out so good. Roasted bell peppers are amazing. So I just cut those into like rings. I just left the seeds in there. I drizzled them in some olive oil and seasoned them with some salt and pepper. So very simple. And I just got those dumped out and spread out the best that I could. My oven was preheated to 475. I popped that in there for 15 minutes. And then after the 15 minutes, I took it out. I am flipping my chicken on over, and I'm just going to put the remaining glaze all over the chicken. I'm also going to take a fork here in a second and test the doneness of the potatoes. I knew they wouldn't be quite done just yet, but I just wanted to make sure that they weren't like rock hard. So they were starting to get good and soft. So I popped that back in for about 8 more minutes. So that's what the recipe said that it would be done at. So the chicken was completely done, but the potatoes, they were edible, but I like mine really soft, so I decided to take the chicken out and then put the veggies back in for a few more minutes. So here is everything when it is done. Like I said, the peppers were amazing. The potatoes were good. And in my opinion, the chicken was just okay. It wasn't bad by any means. Like, every bit of it was 8. It filled our bellies. It was just lacking flavor to me. I feel like a lot of that glaze just kind of melted off the chicken and kind of got watered down from all the juices in the chicken. It didn't really like stick to it the way I imagined or like caramelize to it the way I wanted. But yeah, I mean, it was all right. So that is going to wrap up the video. I really hope this was some good dinner inspiration for you. I hope there was at least one meal in here that you'd like to try yourself. And as always, I want to thank you guys so much for watching. And I really hope that each and every one of you have a great rest of your week. And I will see y'all real soon in my next video.